Mark Littlewood's here, Director of Popular Conservatism. If only it was, Mark, we'd still have a Conservative government. But, you know, what are we going to do with this lot?
Yeah, it's a pretty grim state of affairs, Mike, isn't it? Happy first birthday to Morning Glory and Common Sense. We're going to need more of it. I enjoyed that Keir Starmer clip from back in the day about because it reassures me that he might have some idea about what a woman is. He correctly identifies Rachel Reeves as a woman. So, you know, perhaps there is some progress being made at governmental level.
Isn't it extraordinary, though, that some of these socialists, they give away so much with their facial expressions? I mean, you've never seen him happier. He's got this ludicrous kind of beatific smile on his face, like as if, who knew a woman could actually do a good job in charge of being in charge of anything? I mean, it's pretty sexist, actually.
It is pretty sexist, but it's also, what do they call it, Mike? Performative. I don't think anybody out there gives a damn whether the Chancellor's tall, short, black, white, male, female. They care about what the Chancellor of the Exchequer does, and that's been a pretty pitiful record to date. And he's just been mentioning in this morning's news, Mike. I mean, look at the state of the economy. Yeah. And what's the great idea that the government have come up with to try and fix things? Put a tax on milkshakes. I mean, talk about fiddling while Rome burns. We've got some really systemic problems here in the UK, and that seems to be the great new tax plan. I mean, words fail me, really.
Well, exactly right. And it's almost as if they've kind of had a look around the back of the sofas in the Treasury and gone, what haven't we taxed yet? Oh, I know. Let's put a tax on sugar. And I mean, I know that your background, if you don't mind me saying, is fairly libertarian. So you're not really a fan, I don't think, of nudge politics, getting people to stop eating fatty foods by putting taxes on them to make them more expensive. It doesn't work, does it?
No, it doesn't really work. I mean, the problem you get is people just switch. So, for example, if you were buying, I don't know, a relatively expensive fizzy drink brand or a relatively expensive milkshake, and a sugar tax is then imposed upon it, making it more expensive still, the idea, the hope of the nanny staters is you then desist from drinking milkshakes or fizzy drinks. You just switch to water or something. But it's just as likely that you'll just switch to a cheaper brand of fizzy drink or milkshake, possibly one with even more sugar in. Yeah. So it's not at all obvious to me that since we brought in the sugar tax on fizzy drinks and now potentially extending it to milky drinks, that this has done anything to combat obesity at all. It's just hit people in the pocket.
Exactly right. Just got a bit of breaking news to interrupt you with, Mark. There's a huge inferno apparently broken out at an electrical substation in central London. Ferocious flames being seen for miles. London Fire Brigade say they're on the scene extinguishing a fire at an electrical substation, NW8. In Westminster. It's a very visible fire causing heavy smoke, which has prompted 41 calls to our 999 control officers. It's in a place called Victoria Passage, NW8, which is sort of northwestish London, I suppose. We'll keep you updated with all of that. Rather ironic that should happen literally the day after the big blackout in Spain and Portugal, Mark, which we're being told this morning is linked to net zero, and the fact that that their national grid is much less resilient now than it ever was, and so which has made it more difficult to fix, basically.
Yes, that does seem to be. I mean, I think it's still slightly early days to get to exactly what went wrong and why. But it does seem to be associated with a reliance on unreliable energy. If you were to look at Spain and Portugal as well, and parts of France, very, very heavily reliant on solar and wind power. And it seems to me that's not a coincidence here. So I hope that this is a wake-up call. Yeah. That a key thing about your energy supply isn't just how green it is, it's how reliable it is. And unfortunately, the two appear to be in conflict. I mean, it's a grim story in Spain. Obviously, we're immediately focusing on, people being stranded at airports, can't use a hole-in-the-wall machine, or, have to, got to get your hands on cash somehow, panic buying. Yeah. But I wonder when the audit comes in, exactly how much human and economic damage this would have done to Spain's economy. I mean, how have hospitals been disrupted, for example, or getting an ambulance or something like that?
I mean,
there's a real human and economic price here.
I mean, I suppose you'd like to think that a place like a hospital would have to have surely some kind of generator scenario. But
sure, I'm sure that's right. But there'll be endless stories. I don't know, of people's mobile phones going flat, and therefore it being hard for them to call for emergency help, for example.
Well, it does ask the question, doesn't it? How reliant do you want to be as an economy and as a country on absolutely everything running on electricity? You know, and I know people are going to start accusing me of being this sort of antediluvian Luddite, but, you know, there's a lot to be said for, I was talking to somebody this morning about it, keeping cash somewhere so that if you do need to have money and you can't access it because your bank account is, you know, under lock and key electronically, you actually could do with having some cash in a drawer somewhere in the house.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I mean, we get very used to all sort of modern technologies. Okay, electricity isn't itself a modern technology, but all of our modern technologies rely off it, really. So I think always having a plan B is not a bad idea. But again, it shows the sort of mania that we live in today, Mike, that parts of the Western world are having to think this through. That, oh my God, our energy supply is so unreliable. You know, where have I put the powdered milk? Where have I put the stash of cash behind the bed? I mean, you would hope that in 2025 Europe, we would have a sufficiently sophisticated power grid that these sort of things would not happen as part of the system itself. I mean, there was early speculation it might be a cyber attack. I mean, that would obviously, I think that's been ruled out now. That would be a different thing. But if the system itself can't basically cope with keeping the lights on across the country, there is something horrifically wrong with the way the system is built. And I suspect that might turn out to be a grotesque over-reliance on unreliable renewable energy.
Exactly right. And yet Ed Miliband seems absolutely more convinced than ever that it's the way forward. And with all the encouragement for us to use electric cars, you wouldn't be able to use one of those in Spain and Portugal either. You know, the amount of electricity, sort of pressure, if you like, on the system is going to be even higher. And with more and more electricity being required for more and more electric car, you know, charging points, and for more and more electric arc furnaces in Scunthorpe, you know, there's not going to be enough electricity to go around, it seems to me.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to a bit what you were saying, Mike, about, you know, having a plan B and a bit of cash stored away somewhere and not being reliant on everything always working perfectly. I can remember as a kid, we had a stash of candles because blackouts happened once in a while. So all of those steps are necessary. But for energy, what you need is diversity of supply, frankly, and you don't want to be reliant on particular energy sources that can just fail. You know, and that's particularly true of sort of solar and wind. That they're very patchy in what they can deliver. Well, I wouldn't necessarily mind, you know, a certain percentage of our grid being powered by solar or wind, a percentage here or a percentage there, because losing that doesn't mean suddenly all the lights go out. But once you're getting towards, which I think Spain was towards, more than 50% reliance on solar and wind, then something going awry there can bring about this particular collapse. I mean, there may have been human error involved as well in not accessing alternative supplies as readily and quickly as possible. But underlying it, we seem to have gone down the wrong route. And I would think this puts huge pressure on Ed Miliband's bizarre plans and has to completely reopen the debate we're having about carbon net zero. But it's easy to get to carbon net zero if you don't have any energy at all. We'd get to carbon net zero pretty goddamn fast. But I presume that we prioritise keeping the lights on as rather higher than some rather bizarre target to get carbon emissions to net zero by 2050.
Yeah, exactly right. And now we're facing a summer of discontent, according to the Mail. It's not the first headline like that we've seen. We know that the teaching unions, the nursing unions, the council unions, the civil servants are all dusting up for a fight. They also know that because Rachel Reeves and the Labour government are in charge, they're more than likely to get whatever it is they ask for. You know, we saw the junior doctors getting 22%. We saw the railway drivers getting, train drivers getting 15%. You know, it really is going back to the 70s, this. I mean, you're not quite as old as I am, but I mean, I remember that pretty well, and it was pretty grim. I mean, we dealt with it because we didn't really have much choice. But, you know, people will not. I don't think the people are resilient in this country anymore as we were then. And can you imagine the state we'd be in if we actually had, you know, the power 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the evening, you know, candles, as you say, not being able to cook anything apart from outside of those 2 hours. I mean, I don't think this country would be able to cope.
Yeah, I think you're right. We've lost quite a lot of resilience. And we've lost resilience at political level as well, Mike. You're right to point out that, you know, almost the first act of the incoming Labour government was to give a no-strings-attached payout to a good number of public sector workers in trade unions that are friendly to the Labour Party. But this is a bit akin to feeding your right arm to the alligator in the hope that it will satiate the alligator's appetite.
Yes.
I mean, it comes back for more. And you'll be hearing from the unions over the coming days and weeks that, you know, their pay's got to go up with inflation, and it's got to keep it's got to keep pace with various other jobs in the private sector. But I think the way we've got to look at this is that in the public sector, pay should go up when productivity goes up. That's how private sector employees are typically judged. It's not a perfect science to measure somebody's productivity, but generally speaking, if you can be shown to be contributing well to a company that's doing better and becoming more productive, you can expect a pay rise. If you're working in a failing company and not hitting your targets, you don't expect to get a pay rise. And the truth of the matter is that public sector productivity has flatlined for years now. There hasn't been a great improvement in our schools and our hospitals and amongst our civil servants. The civil service hasn't got more productive. So if it's not getting more productive, what on earth is the basis for a claim of a pay rise? And I think governments need to be much clearer about this. You know, get back to us when, for example, NHS waiting lists have fallen rapidly and markedly. That's the sort of thing that would deserve a pay rise. You don't get a pay rise just because a year has passed since your last one.
No, exactly right. And if you remember the junior doctors argument, it was all about, you know, oh, well, we haven't had a pay rise for so many years that we need to have a big one now. And it was like, well, actually, no, you have had plenty of pay rises, but they've been sort of in line with inflation, 2% here, 3% there. And because inflation was riding so high at one point under Rishi Sunak, it was up at 11%. They were claiming they needed an 11% pay rise. But when it went back down again, they didn't go, oh, actually, now we don't need that. They decided that, you know, we must have a 22% pay rise or else we're never going back to work.
Yeah, and exactly. And in the private sector, you'd be laughed at for making such claims.
Yeah.
Your claim in the private sector for pay typically has to be based around, you know, how your performance has improved, how you've got better at your job, how a cohort of workers in a particular area are producing more than they were a year ago, producing faster than they were a year ago, producing the same amount for lower resources than they were a year ago. When it comes to the public sector, it just seems to be much more about straight entitlement. Yeah. Inflation is X%, so you must give me an X% pay rise. Nothing to do with how well I do my job, nothing to do with how productive my fellow workers are, just gimme, gimme, gimme. And if we keep moving resources from the relatively productive private side of the economy to the relatively less productive public side of the economy, then you can expect economic growth to continue to be on the floor. And basically, our fiscal problems, our inability to balance the budget, all of these ills to get worse, frankly, as the weeks and months and years roll on.
Absolutely right. And funnily enough, just in time for the end of our conversation, a mini heat wave this week could play havoc with the economy, according to The Sun, page 17. Loads of people will work from home, but they won't actually be working from home. They'll be sunbathing in the garden.
Yeah, pretty much right. And they won't even be able to afford a milkshake if Rachel Reeves gets away to have one while they're in their garden, right?
Exactly right.
Grim times, Mike. We're going to need more common sense.
I know. I'll see you down the pub. Mark Littlewood, thank you very much indeed. Director of Popular Conservatism, without any shadow of a doubt. Not exactly with a rosy outlook on life.
Well, thanks for watching. And if you enjoyed that video, please make sure you give it a like and subscribe to the Popcorn YouTube channel. You can also find out more about us on our website, popularconservatism.com, and you can follow us on social media. Details are in the show notes below.